Hanoi, Vietnam, the site of this year's San Miguel Vietnam Marathon, the world's first sporting occasion of 1993 and Hanoi's first ever international sporting event. Following the success of last year's Ho Chi Minh Marathon, the Vietnamese government has now fully endorsed the event, with the venue to be rotated between Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh each year.
We feel one marathon annually fits the weather pattern in Vietnam, so we can have a tropical, warm marathon for runners in Ho Chi Minh City and a lovely, cool race in Hanoi.
Few who saw last year's event can forget the mesmerizing scene as Hong Kong's Tim Suter strode to victory, engulfed by an entourage of fascinated well-wishers. He's back this year to defend his title, as are many who took part in last year's marathon. For Vietnam, this event is much more than just a marathon. It's an opportunity for its people and culture to open their society to the rest of the world, and a chance for the world to take a closer look at a country that remains relatively unknown. Most of us know Vietnam through newsreels and Hollywood war portrayals. Our image then of a war-torn country in the 60s and 70s is somewhat tainted, especially when considered that the US intervention was but a brief episode in a 2,000-year history that includes a millennium of Chinese rule. Since the war, Vietnam has constantly struggled under the economic strains of a trade embargo enforced by the USA in 1975, and one that is still in place today. To counter this, the Vietnamese have gradually changed their own ways of dealing with the hardships, and in 1988 they began an economic reform plan which embraced free market economics and invited investment into the country by the rest of the world. And in Hanoi today, there's a feeling that even bigger change is just around the corner. Last month, with added cooperation by the Vietnamese to help solve the mystery of the American soldiers missing in action, the USA has loosened the embargo, allowing American companies to set up contracts. And it's hoped that with the new era of Bill Clinton's presidency, it will be lifted altogether in the new year. There's an exciting sense of a new age dawning in Vietnam, and the marathon is very much a catalyst to that change. One need only stroll through the bustling streets of Hanoi to capture the essence of this industriousness. Rush hour here lasts all day long. To the organisers, the marathon is very much part of achieving their economic and political goals. Sport has often been used as a political pawn, and while many argue that the two should never mix, it appears acceptable in this instance.
I don't believe that sports and politics do mix, or even sports and economics. However, realistically, looking at a major sporting event, which is why we chose a marathon, it does actually impact on the perspective image that a country projects. And by having a marathon in Ho Chi Minh City and in Hanoi, we are opening up the country to anyone in the world who wishes to come to experience for themselves the nature of the climate in Vietnam, whether it's the investment climate or the tourism potential or the political climate. As you can see, we are bringing many international runners here. We have international television coverage, international media coverage. All of this bodes well for the fact that Vietnam has turned a page in its history. And this does, therefore, splash over into the political realm. And I think that this event will be a catalyst because it will offer a true image of Hanoi to the world.
If you just look at what sports achieve throughout the world, whether it's through the Olympics, World Championships, most of the times that people have come together, sharing a common goal, friendliness, in an environment that enhances the spirit of exchange between mankind, it's sport. And it's very significant everywhere else, and it's a very significant event here.
The preparation for this year's event has taken months, with thousands of man-hours spent designing and preparing the 42-kilometre course. From the lights that shine over Hoan Kiem Lake to the hand-painted sponsorship signs that will line the course.
To us, it's been a fair amount of work, but I think it comes from the experience of Hanoi. This is their first event, and I'm just really pleased by all the work that they have done. It's just been a terrific amount of citizen involvement. I mean, you can see all these signs. They've been working for months, apparently. Big community effort, and they're very proud of it, and we're very proud that they're very proud of it.
This year will host Vietnam's first wheelchair race, and it holds a special place in the weekend's proceedings. There are disabled athletes from Thailand, the Philippines and Hong Kong, and there's even a politician from Australia, Graham Edwards, a man who lost both legs on a landmine during the Vietnam War. All those gathered were treated by their hosts to this New Year's Eve reception, which included dinner and fireworks, and a chance for all the competitors to meet each other and raise a glass to the new year ahead. There was also a unique visit to the famous Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum, where soldiers carried the competitors to the tomb, normally only accessible by stairs. Graham Edwards sums up the athletes' thoughts on taking part this year.
And the great thing about sport for people with disabilities is that often it's a stepping stone for something else. So when you get involved in sport, you find out exactly what you can do. You find out that the barriers that you thought might have been there really aren't, and you can get involved, you can compete, you can raise your level of fitness, and as I said, that's often a stepping stone then to take part in the more mainstream areas of life itself.
Bright and early then on race day, and the competitors are all ready for the start behind their respective countries and regions, and it only needed Tran Tri Tan Dam of the Hanoi's People Committee to officially open this year's marathon.
On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to announce the opening of the Sang Bien Vietnam Marathon Hanoi 93.
The words couldn't be more appropriate. The speed with which the wheelchairs took off surprised everybody. And with a top speed of 20 to 30 miles an hour, they're even too quick for the television vans to stay ahead of at first. Right from the off, though, it was obvious that this would be a race between the Hong Kong and Thailand teams. At the first bend, they held the first 4 positions. After about half a kilometre of this 10-kilometre race, it was Chok Prasop of Thailand and Wong Chi Kung of Hong Kong that begun to pull away from the rest of the pack. With lightning speed, Prasap soon pulled further ahead, and after 3 kilometres was about 150 metres clear of the second-place man from Hong Kong, Wong Chi Kung. And by the halfway point, there was no one else in sight. But Prasap was not letting up, and he powered through the start-finish line on his way to the last 5 kilometres, showing no signs of slowing. About 2 minutes behind was the battle for second place between Wong Chi Kung of Hong Kong and Thong Prachiti of Thailand, Wong staying right on his tail as they headed into the second part of the race. In 4th place, another Hong Kong competitor, 17-year-old Chung Yang Kung, a far more inferior race chair with 4 wheels and a lot heavier and harder to steer. According to the experts, the key to fast wheelchair racing is the ability to keep the upper body as steady as possible, using all the strength in the upper arms to create momentum. And as you can see with the bigger and more cumbersome chairs, this is extremely hard work. As the backmarkers made their way to the halfway point, there was still all the drive and enthusiasm of the leaders. These are 2 of the local competitors, and they were cheered on throughout the race despite being somewhat off the pace. Times, though, were by no means everything in this race, with the winners coming in under half an hour and the backmarkers taking over an hour. The point emphasised by all was the idea of taking part, a theory Graham Edwards certainly subscribes to.
I keep saying that the three most important principles of sport are simply participation, 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 and that really is what this marathon's all about from my point of view. I think any marathon's tough. 10Ks is a fair old hike, particularly when you're as unfit as I am.
Graham Edwards there, who finally finished second to last. The variance in the quality of chairs meant that the race was extremely spread out, and the backmarkers here are fighting with the conventional chairs, which are tough to direct and get any kind of speed out of. And as they crossed the line for the very first time, the sirens could be heard as the leader, Chok Prasap of Thailand, was coming round to finish. And it really was a strong performance by him. No one else in sight, and he's going as strong now as he was at the halfway point. His time a superb 24 minutes and 20 seconds. Not a world record, but pretty good under the conditions. And with enough flowers to start a florist, he gave all the waiting media that all-important shot. Four minutes behind the leader, and the battle for second place is still neck and neck between Wong of Hong Kong and Prashidi of Thailand. Wong just pipping him to the post, only to receive his flowers a little unexpectedly. Prashidi taking third place for Thailand. For the backmarkers, it was less of a hurried affair. Local competitor Van Ming Voi coming over the line and having the forethought to bring his own flowers. So then, the results of the wheelchair race: Prasap Chok of Thailand takes first place, Wong Chi Kung of Hong Kong takes second, Prasiti of Thailand takes third, and Cheng of Hong Kong also takes fourth place. Dong Viet Hung of Vietnam was fifth. As dawn breaks over Hoan Kim Lake, about 100 metres from the start, traditional Tai Chi is in full swing. Sport and fitness are a way of life here, and adaptability and convenience are the name of the game. Today, though, will be a new page in Hanoi's sporting history, and it seems fitting in some ways that they've chosen a marathon as their first international endeavour. The courage, endurance and determined willpower it takes to finish a marathon course is easily paralleled with Vietnam's own resilience to endure its turbulent course in history. The The route takes the runners 3 times around Wan Kim Lake, around the city, before heading out into the countryside, where they pass by scenic Ho Tay Lake, with water stops about every 5 kilometres, with the runners doing about 25 kilometres in the countryside. They then return past Ho Chi Minh's mausoleum and back into the city for the last stretch, back to the start and finish at Wan Kim Lake. With the back markers from the half marathon just finishing up, the marathon runners were under starters' orders. The race officially away then just after 8 a.m. The organisers hoping the early morning temperatures would keep the runners as cool as possible for the 42 tough kilometres ahead of them. And right from the start, it was 4 local runners led by Lu Van Hung who pulled ahead of the rest of the field. And by the time they completed the first lap of the lake, Lu had increased his lead over the following pack, which included number 45 Phan Van Phong of Vietnam, race favourite Doug Curtis of the USA, and another local runner, Ding Hoa Phoc, number 88. Within minutes, though, last year's winner Tim Suter of Hong Kong was right on the shoulder of Doug Curtis, and these two began to pull away from the pack and catch up with Lu. In fact, so relaxed was the stride of these two, they even had time to discuss the weather. With about 5 kilometres gone now, Suter and Curtis began to attack Lu's lead. And as he finally turns round to notice them, it's all too late. They power on past him. From here, Suter and Curtis begin to build a substantial lead, ahead of Lu in 3rd place and number 45, Pham, also from Vietnam, taking up 4th position. Just behind him is another local runner, Bu, leading a group of local athletes well on the pace, considering that for most, this was their first taste of a full marathon. Bu had settled on the heels of the only German runner in the marathon, Reinhold Happersberger, number 28. Amongst the backmarkers is American Jim Barker, a Vietnam veteran who took part in last year's inaugural event in Ho Chi Minh and came back this year representing the MIAs. As the leaders head into the countryside at the 10-kilometre mark, Hong Kong's Tim Suter is still shoulder to shoulder with the man from Northville, Michigan, Doug Curtis. Curtis still holds the world record for the most marathons completed under 2 hours and 20 minutes in 1 year. These two were setting a sizzling pace, and while it was still early in the morning, it was unseasonably warm and humid. As they came to the water stop at 15 kilometres, Suter, beginning to feel the conditions, had to stop for extra water and lose the lead from Curtis. Behind the leaders, the local runners Pham and Lu were keeping up a steady pace, just ahead of the German runner Happersberger. And as the leaders approached the Russian bridge, Tim Suter had regained some ground and was checking on how far the rest of the pack were behind. Curtis, on the other hand, didn't seem to have a care in the world.
Having fun yet?
As they passed under the bridge, Curtis was waving and clapping at the crowd with Tim Suter about 20 yards behind. Moving up into 3rd now was the German runner Happersberger, number 28. As the crowd seemed somewhat intrigued by their first ever marathon, an overzealous policeman wasn't missing out on the chance to use his brand new megaphone. By the 20-kilometre mark, Lu and Pham were still holding an impressive 4th and 5th, much to the appreciation of a few of the 10,000 policemen employed along the route. Ahead of them, Tim Suter maintained his 2nd place, still clutching his prized bottle of water. Doug Curtis was now just over the halfway point. He describes what it takes to be a marathon runner.
I run twice a day and almost 20 kilometers a day, 25 kilometers a day. You know, day in, day out, no matter what the weather, I get out there and do it. The top runners are those that can concentrate the best throughout the race. And your mind's going to wander throughout the race. You just can't help that. When you're out there for 2.5 hours, you can't think about what you're doing the whole time. But the trick is that to get back to it real quick. Sometimes I will look at the crowd, you know, I might catch somebody out on the road, or you're stopping for some water or whatever, and you lose a little bit of concentration, but you get back to it real quick. For me, it's fun. I found out the marathon is where my forte, it's what I'm real good at. And I've sort of created my own. Everybody finds something that sort of makes them a star, famous or whatever, something they can be recognized for. And I sort of found that my niche was that I could run many marathons real fast.
As Curtis continued his comfortable lead at the front, the rest of the field could only tag along in awe. By now, the field was spread over 4 to 5 kilometers from the leaders all the way to the backmarkers. Curtis was not completely alone, though. Tim Suter was still in the picture, about 100 meters behind. And just behind Suter and his police escort was the German, Reinhold Happersberger. He was keeping a steady pace, but his style was in no way as fluid as the action of Curtis. Despite this, though, he was catching on Suter, who was just ahead. Doug Curtis was now beginning to head back towards the city. The crowds were beginning to grow again, and Curtis gladly received their applause, waving and smiling with no signs of strain from the 30 kilometers he'd now completed. Some way behind, but of little threat to Curtis, Reinhold Happersberger had now passed Tim Suter to take second place. For many, though, the drama of this late race surge was lost as they went about their business regardless. Tim Suter had by no means given up, but his face and overall style were beginning to show the strains of a long, hot, grueling race. He, if anyone, though, should know anything can happen in the last 10 kilometers. After winning last year in Ho Chi Minh, he declared he had no idea he'd been leading. With Curtis well ahead now, Happersberger in second reached Ho Chi Minh's mausoleum. But in the distance, Tim Suter was visibly catching. It appeared that the German too was succumbing to the heat in the final stages. Just ahead of them, Doug Curtis was approaching the final stretch. Looking extremely relaxed and waving to the crowds, he knew now that victory was well within his grasp. Only 2 kilometers to go now as he made his way down Embassy Road. Behind, the battle for second had moved Suter's way, and as he turned to look for Happersberger, the German had had enough and was reduced to a walk. Curtis comes to the finish in full stride and seemingly unaffected by the 2.5-hour grueling run. He comes over the line in a time of 2 hours, 39 minutes, 14 seconds. A little longer than anticipated, but good enough for the win. And as the photographers gathered for the photo, Doug couldn't resist muttering the now immortal words.
Hello, Vietnam. Hello, Vietnam. Good morning, Vietnam. It's a lot of fun. I don't get too many opportunities to run a race where you can wave and cheer and smile in the crowd and still run well. Most times it's more of a challenging race, where this one I just could run nice, run my own pace and have fun out there.
Not having quite as much fun, last year's winner, Tim Suter of Hong Kong, took a valiant second place. His time of 2 hours, 50 minutes and 4 seconds, about 5 minutes slower than last year. But overall, it was a lot more painstaking.
Oh, it's dreadful. It really was dreadful. It was probably just as bad last year, but it felt... Oh. I was just wanting to finish. Just wanted to get it over.
You're a man that does one marathon a year. You came first last year, second this year. Are you going to carry on?
I don't think it's worth it to do it again and finish third. We'll see. Time's a great healer.
In third place, an excellent run by local runner Trong Phong Huynh, a time of 2 hours, 51 minutes and 41 seconds. And with a total of $38,000 up for grabs overall, the top finishers were, by marathon standards, well rewarded for their efforts. It may well have been a factor in the battle for fourth and fifth place. Reinhold Happersberger, who'd stopped a few kilometers earlier, had somehow found the strength to carry on and make it to the finish. He was being challenged by local runner Van Mang Duan. Cheered on by the crowd though, Duang made a last-gasp kick for the finish, taking fourth from Happersberger, who'd now resigned himself just to completing the race. Local runners then taking third and fourth for a strong showing by the Vietnamese overall. In the women's race, first over the line was Dang Thi Theo of Hanoi, in 3 hours, 25 minutes, 51 seconds. And her exhaustion as she came over the line was short-lived. It's not unusual for the legs to lock up after the race such as this, and she was fine within minutes. So then, to the results of Hanoi's first marathon. Doug Curtis wins in a time of 2 hours, 39 minutes and 14 seconds. Last year's winner Tim Suter is second. Local runners take third and fourth. Happersberger is fifth, and David Hoover of the United States is sixth. So then, was it an overall success? Event organizer Huan Ving Zhang has the final word.
But I think it was a success. All the guests and all the Hanoi people are happy now.